Um, Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Gershon Margolis. I am the founder of Imperial Advisory. We are a fractional CFO firm, and we work for business owners, CEOs, and sometimes CFOs, and help them make better business decisions. We pick up where accounting leaves off, and we provide business owners, CEOs, and CFOs with the tools to make more informed business decisions, and also to get a lot of their planning and analytics done so that they can spend more time working on other aspects of their role. We work on a variety of different things. So we come in as CFOs, but our team has a broad range of experience, and we're able to help with a variety of different things inside the business. There are all sorts of things, though, that we don't work on, but that we notice. So we try to be aware and educate our clients on things besides for finance. And that's where Ben comes in. Communication is super important, and that's what Ben works on. There's communication inside the company, there's communication outside the company. And Ben has been working on this for a long time. And I'm going to just take a moment and acknowledge the people from our team who are here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ben for our presentation. Looking forward to learning a lot today. Oh, Brittany says that she will post comments from the people on, it says me, but it's really Brittany, from people on the LinkedIn Live. All right, so who do we have here? We have Barry from our team, one of our CFOs is here. We have Steve, good to see you. We have Brittany, who you don't see, but she's making everything happen behind the scenes. We have Ken, who is listening but driving. And we have Buddy, who used to be on our team and was an amazing person, and we hope he's doing great. We're glad to see him visiting. Without further ado, Ben, take it away.
Thanks, Gershon. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody here and everybody listening on LinkedIn. Please, I tend to be very, informal about this. If you guys have questions along the way, let me know. I'm happy to stop halfway through the conversation if something doesn't make sense, or you have a question or concern or whatever. This thing is all about you guys, and to be able to make sure that it's best for you. So, close to 30 years ago, I used to work for Kinko's. I don't know if everybody remembers Kinko's. Kinko's became FedEx Office, and we were 800 different locations across North America. I handled the Pacific West region, and I couldn't figure out why there was such animosity between the sales teams and the operations teams. We would bring in these fairly large, complex jobs, and the promise was that these jobs would get overnight, and I get a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning and says, well, we didn't get around to the job last night, and the client was looking for it at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we would have to sit there and scramble and take care of the client and figure out how we were going to manage this thing, because operations just decide, well, what, we just didn't get around to it last night. Well, 7 or 8 months go by, and I find myself in Vegas with 800 different sales managers and 800 different ops managers. And we're having a 3-day conference. And halfway through the conference, they take this enormous conference room and they split it down the middle. They put the huge wall up right between it, and they put the sales people on the right side and the operations people on the left side. And we're going through whole things about adding value and customer relations and building trust and those types of conversations. And we had some great speakers that came in. And halfway through it, I said, you know what? I need to go to the washroom. So I get up and I go outside and go to the washroom. I go, I'm curious. I'm curious what's going on the ops side. So I sneak into the ops meeting, and it's all about driving cost. It's all about, making sure that we have the minimal amount of staff on board so we can do it. It's all about what is, you guys are being paid on pure profit. What is the profit? What is the pure profit margin? So we're getting a completely different set of conversations on two sets of the wall. And to me, that is the essence of ineffective communication within companies. It's not just what's being said, it's how it's being said, and what are the processes and procedures in place and the motivation in place that's driving that behavior. Because we were being compensated completely differently. We were being told completely different KPIs. We were being told completely different OKRs. And by doing so, all it was doing was causing animosity between the two groups. And they were doing all the simple, high margin jobs that they could do because that's how they were being compensated. And the work that we were bringing in based on the bigger logos and the bigger jobs was being ignored or not being handled properly because they didn't have the right staff on at night to handle it, or they were just ignoring it completely because that wasn't going to make them the type of margin that they wanted that night. So that is a challenge. And that actually led to the downfall of why I left Kinko's and why Kinko's actually ended up becoming FedEx Office, because we had clients like Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers. Well, Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers is the largest heavy equipment auction house in the world. At the time, they probably did about 250 to 300 auctions a year. Probably they do about double that now. I was trying to work a national contract for these people. So they had national pricing. So no matter which store they went to in the entire chain, they would get consistent pricing, consistent service, and consistent, time of product in, product out. And we negotiated this through head office. And we set it out some tests. And we said, okay, we're going to test with these 15 different regions. We're going to do this. And we tested it for 2 months. And then I started taking a look at their invoices coming back. And the invoices were all over the place. And we started contacting the different operations managers and say, what's going on? Well, you're not invoicing per the contract pricing. They said, our region, our rules. Our region, our rules. Our attitude is they're bringing it in last minute. They need it for tomorrow morning. They're going to pay what we want them to pay. And there was no way that head office, because of the culture of the company, because the way the company was set up, could be able to enforce national pricing. And this was going to cost me about $100,000 a year personally. It was going to cost the company millions. And I left. And I ended up taking their top 10 clients for the region with me. And the branch that I worked for ended up closing a year and a half later because they couldn't get the profit margin to keep that actual branch healthy. They were losing money month after month after month after I left. And it's not an ego thing for me. It's the fact that they were not willing to realize that unless the left hand and the right hand are talking the same thing, unless everybody's on the same page, unless everybody is able to understand what is the reason for us being here, these conflicts, these internal crises, these miscommunications can cost organizations hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And that's where this conversation begins. This conversation begins with the fact that organizations sometimes do little silly things. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's major, it's catastrophe, but a lot of times it's minor miscommunications and misalignment and not understanding what everybody needs that causes these conflicts, that causes the animosity, that causes hundreds of thousands of dollars that are after-tax dollars to walk out the door. And if we can communicate better, if we can sit there and say, okay, what are we trying to achieve? Who are we trying to achieve it for? What is the end goal? What does achieving that end goal allow us to do that we can't do today? And what is the ramifications of not achieving that goal? And if everybody can understand what the motivations are, what is needed, why it's needed, and how their particular actions affect whether it's going to succeed or not, we're all in better shape. Now, here's an interesting exercise I do because everybody thinks they communicate effectively. Everybody sits there and says, how many times have you heard, well, I told them this, how come they didn't understand it? I hear it all the time in business. It says, I've told them this 3 times. It says, how come they didn't, just do what I need them to do? Well, the question is, are you communicating it in the same language that people are understanding?
Yep.
Everybody walks into a situation when they walk into the office. Gershon, you had a question?
Yeah. Is it just are they understanding, or is there also an element of, you're not necessarily being persuasive or giving them a reason to listen? Like where is it breaking down?
I think
And how do you-
it's both. I think it's both. I mean, you need to be able to speak in the language that people understand, not only what needs to be done, but why it needs to be done in the first place. Why is it important to them? Why is it important to them individually that they succeed? Well, if we succeed, then all of a sudden everybody's bonus goes up. Oh, I see, all of a sudden people are not going to be laid off. If we succeed, we're going to be able to get this bigger client, and we're going to be able to do far more complex things. And we're going to be able to get that piece of machinery that everybody's been screaming and wanting for. It's a matter of sitting there going, what are the things that are going to make people motivated to be able to move forward? And different people are motivated by different things. We all have our own hopes, wants, needs, fears, and desires. And what motivates me is not going to motivate you, Gershon. It's not going to motivate you, Barry. We all have different things that motivate us. And trying to sit there and say, well, we're going to do this and we're going to get this result. Well, nobody cares. Here's a perfect example. Just before COVID, I had a client of mine that was driving towards $20 million. They wanted to do 20 million in 2020. So they put this great big poster on the wall, 20 in 2020. And they wanted to do $20 million in sales. And I asked them, why? Well, it's a great number. Well, what does it mean to your people? What does achieving that $20 million allow you to do? And they couldn't answer it. It was a number on a wall. It was this artificial number. They were at 18 million. They wanted to get to $20 million. But there wasn't any plan of what are you going to do when you achieve that $20 million? How are you going to compensate your people when you make that $20 million? How are you going to celebrate this? What are you going to be able to do then that you can't do now? And all they were focused on was this magical number of $20 million. I said, are you willing to go from 40% margin to 25% margin to go from 18 million to 20 million? Because you can always drive sales by decreasing margin. Your top line number is going to be better, but your bottom line number is going to be awful. And it's a matter of thinking about those ramifications. We had a situation, and I'm trying to remember the details of it, where we had a client that was looking to they were building in a new ERP system. That's what it was. They were building in a new ERP system, and they thought they had the right people in the room. They had brought in all the ops people and the text people. They even brought in a couple HR people into the thing, but they neglected marketing, sales, and customer experience. They never asked them for their opinion. They never asked them what they needed. And it turns out they missed 5 different critical things when they were speccing this ERP system that basically put these 3 departments behind the 8 ball, because now they couldn't do things that they originally were able to do. And they were having to create workarounds, and they were now more ineffective with the new system than they would have been with the old system. And all of this could have been simply dealt with if they had just asked these people, we're looking to put this new system together. What do you need? What's going to help you? How is this going to help you? And why is this going to be better for you in the first place? Well, those 3 departments basically killed the new ERP system because they fought against it tooth and nail. They fought against it, and all of a sudden they ended up giving up on the whole process because they couldn't make this work, because they had committed to a system that wasn't going to enable these departments to be successful, and the cost of retrofit was just going to be unreasonable to do it. So it was good money after bad. They'd already spent $150,000 on consultants and this and that and everything to put all this together. And if they had taken the time and figured out what the motivations were of the key players who were going to be actually using this, they would have been far more successful. Does this help, Gorsha?
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, going back, what I find interesting is what we say is not what everybody hears. I do an exercise live, and unfortunately I can't do it with you guys because we haven't got this thing set up. But what we do is we usually get people to come into the room and either have laptops set up or people bring their laptops or whatever, and we get them a free copy of the new Adobe Firefly, which is an AI image generation software. There's lots of them out there. That's just the one that I tend to use. And I put a picture up on the wall. And I say, okay, everybody, describe that image that you see up on the wall into the AI system and have it draw a picture. Say you had 12 people in the room. I will guarantee you are going to have 12 different images because everybody describes the image the way that they see it. Say it's a snowstorm with two cars in it with snow on the roof, but the driveways have been cleared. There's snow on the wires. There's 3 birds on the wire. What did you miss? Were the cars facing forward? Were the cars facing backwards? Was it an SUV or was it a sedan? Were the houses, small, little modest 1,200 square foot houses, or were they 3,000 foot mansions? How far were the birds? What kind of birds were they? There's all sorts of detail that we have inside our head. We see that picture clear as day because we know what that picture is. We've been working on the image. We've been thinking about it. We've been, mulling things over. But when you actually put it into the AI and say, here's a description, you're going to miss about 12 different things. And those images are going to come across completely different because of that. That's how we communicate. Well, think of a new project and you have a small team that's building a project. Whether it's an ERP, whether it's a new CRM, whether it's some new process, procedure, whatever, you have a small team working on it. They've been working on it for 6 or 9 months or 12 months, and they're finally ready to bring that out to the world. Well, they all have a clear idea. Those 11, 12, 15 people have a clear idea of what this program is, why we need it, what it's going to do, how it's going to work, all those type of things, because they've hashed it out for the last year. And now they start trying to communicate this out to the world. Well, they assume everybody's bought in the same way that they are. But the problem is they're on step 37 and everybody else is on step 1. People that they're trying to communicate this still don't know why they need it. They still don't know what the vision is. Why are we going forward with this? What is this going to enable us to do that we can't today? And that's where a lot of these, these change management programs break down, because you don't get buy-in early, because you're assuming everybody's thinking about this project and is excited about this project the same way you are, and they see the benefits the same way you do. They don't. And that's where a lot of these programs break down. This is why change management, 70% of change management programs fail. At least that's what Harvard Business Review says. So I think it's a little higher, but it fails because of lack of communication, a lack of effective communication. And we need to communicate through an entire process, because if we're not communicating through an entire process, we can't say something once and have everybody figure it out. Think of the billboard. You drive by a billboard 5 times. You probably didn't even see it. You're so focused on the road. You're so focused on what you're doing. And that billboard is sitting right in front of you, but you didn't really see it because you really didn't do it. All of a sudden you hit a red light. Oh, there's a billboard there. Light turns green. You don't think about it twice. Well, you take that same route to work 50, 75, 100 times. By the time you've seen it 100 times, you don't even need to look at it because you know it's there and you know exactly what it does. But it's taken time for that to seep into your psyche. You know what the ad is, you know who it's for, you know how to contact these people, and you'll move forward with it if and when it adds value to you. It's the same thing with the human psyche. We don't listen to something once and go, oh, I get it. All right, I'm ready to go. Most of us need to mull things over. Most of us need to sit there and say, okay, what's in it for me? How am I going to benefit, or am I going to benefit? Or is this going to cost me my job? Wait a second here. We got AI coming into the business. Everybody's telling me AI is going to take our jobs away. Is my job in jeopardy? Wait a second here. Do I need to go looking for another job? Hey, Sally, ours may be in jeopardy. And all of a sudden, if there's no communication around this, 50 people walk out the door looking for another work because they're scared that the AI program, which may or may not benefit them, is going to take their jobs because nobody's communicated otherwise. We need to think about these things. We need to think about not only what we say, but how we say it, how often we say it to, and the language we use as we're communicating it. We do a lot of things with large enterprise level companies. And we sit there and say, okay, how do you build change? How do you communicate change? How do you communicate through a change process? And a change process is not the minute of change. Change process happens 6 to 9 months before the actual change is actually your green light and you flip the switch. And it's 9 to 12 months after the program is up and running and it's working and it's effective. And you need to be able to take a look at it and say, okay, over this 24, 36, 72-month period, how are we going to communicate what is going to happen, what is happening, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, what have we learned, what are we augmenting, and how are we fixing it, and where are we going? And are we still on track? And what is being on track enabling us to do? For large enterprise level companies, we create internal podcasts that do that. So if you've got 5,000, 10,000, 50, 100, 150,000 employees, going one-to-one and having these one-to-one conversations is impossible. It's absolutely impossible. But using a podcast where you bring in key people from the project to talk about what's happening, to talk about what the challenges are, what the opportunities, how it's going to affect different departments, how it's going to affect different regions, how it's going to affect different countries. And through the process says, hey, we've just implemented this in Oklahoma. These are the things that we learned through it. So when we get to Texas, these are the things that we're going to change from the original process in order to make things better. Wait a second here. We now have, gone through Texas. We learned something else about Texas. Texas worked a little bit differently from the first plant. Now, when we're bringing it to the East Coast, we're going to augment both of those changes and make it better there. So people can see through the whole process that as things are being implemented and as they're being rolled out, what's worked, what hasn't, where the downfalls are, where the benefits are, how this is working, how this is making people's lives better. And when you get to the new plant and you start implementing it, all of a sudden you have a bunch of champions that you wouldn't have in the first place. And those podcasts enable different team leaders to be able to have the conversations on a team-by-team basis. Is look, listen to this podcast, now let's talk about it. How does this affect our team? So you can take it from the macro to the micro and be able to do that. We've done that with change management. We've done that with health and safety. We've done that with onboarding. We had a client that had 50,000 employees, bought a company with 8,000 employees. And typically you're going to have 15, 20% of those people where you have attrition. And a lot of it comes down to that people don't feel welcome in the new company. Well, if you can have a way that you can bring people into the culture slowly and effectively and get them to understand who the players are, what's going on, how things are done differently, etc., you're not going to lose those key people. And therefore, it's not going to cost you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to replace them, depending on the numbers of people that you're working with. So it's a matter of being creative and how you communicate. It's a matter of sitting there going, do I need to talk to 10 people or do I need to talk to 10,000 people? And your strategies are going to be different based on the number of people and what you need to have done and and how significant the project is. What is the long-term ramifications of this particular project? What are the, who is it going to affect? Does it just affect my team, or are there other teams that are affected because of what my team does? And that's one thing that a lot of teams don't think about. We're making a change within the finance department. We think it makes sense, great. But the question is, how does that affect the customer? And if it affects the customer, how is it affecting the sales department? And how is that affecting the customer experience department? And how is it affecting how the invoicing is done, and how the way bills are put out? And does it things make more confusing for operations? We sit there and we look at a report for our own team and we say, oh, that's great. It makes our lives so much better. Thank you very much for doing that. But we need to think about saying, do other teams touch, or are they influenced by what happens when we do this? And the more we can sit there and bring in some interdepartmental meetings and say, look, we're going to make a major change. Is this going to affect you? This is what we're doing. Is this going to affect you? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. But it's that 1 out of 10 times that it does, that all of a sudden, it can create havoc within an organization. Now, here's a perfect example of it. Is that there was a company that I worked with 15 years ago, and they were an East Coast company, and they've moved west, and they built this brand new state-of-the-art facility in California, right near the port, to be able to take things right off the port, cross-dock them, skid everything, and be able to ship them out to all their distribution points. And it saved them 8 or 10 days of shipping. Instead of the stuff going around, going through Panama and back up the East Coast, everything came to the East Coast, and they could either throw it on trains or throw it on trucks and get the distribution and get to market 3 to 4 days sooner. Great. The challenge is when they ship stuff from the West Coast to the East Coast offices were a lot lower. The warehouses were a lot lower. So the problem was they would create these skids, and they'd skin them, say six rows high, and they'd throw them in trucks, and they would put them on and send them off to the East Coast. Well, the first thing that had to happen is that they had to hire some people to take these skids apart, rebuild the skids, re-shrink wrap them before they could be put up in the warehousing, because the skids were too tall. Now, if they had sat there and talked with each other, if people from the East Coast had gone out to the West Coast, looked at it, saw this, and be able to figure it out, they would sit there and say, look, if you're building skids for us, could you do me a favor? Could you put them as 5 high instead of 6 high? Because it makes it easier for our people. They don't have to do all this extra work. And by the way, if you do that, we can double stack them in a 53-foot high boy and be able to use up less shipping space. So our shipping costs will go down. But if they don't have that conversation, it's costing the company hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Because if you have 30 trucks going out a month, each one, loaded 53 wheel, with 12 or 13 skids, that's a lot of skids to have to break down and reposition. Let alone the extra cost of the skids, let alone the extra cost of the shrink wrap, the man hours, everything that goes with it. So we need to take a look and sit there and say, who else are we affecting when we're making decisions? And is that decision going to frustrate people? Because if it frustrates people, all of a sudden they're less likely to work with you, or they're not going to work with you as easily. And they're going to become to the fact that when you need something, it's not going to come through as easily as if you make their lives easier. It's all about reducing tension. It's all about greasing the wheels. It's all about sitting there going, hey, what do you think? Because having those conversations right off the bat and taking a look and saying, how is this affecting us macro as a company? And having the conversations around that make our lives so much easier. Now, let's take this down to an individual level of a leader to a team member. And let's talk about expectations and accountability. You can't have accountability without shared and understood and defined and codified expectations. Just because I said something doesn't mean it's going to get done, because if there are no ramifications for not doing so, if people don't understand why they're doing it and what the overall result of not doing something is, if they've got something else that is as much a competing priority, they're going to work on the competing priority instead of what you want them to work on. So we need to sit there as leaders to be able to sit there on a regular basis with our people and say, look, this is what I need from you, and this is what you can expect from me in the meantime. I will be there to be able to make sure that you get the training that you need, that you have the health and safety stuff that you need, that the operations materials works properly, that you have the budget to do whatever it is. I'll make sure that we get what we need, but I need this from you. And you need to have, everybody needs to understand what they need from each other, what they can expect from each other, and what doing this allows them to both do better and be more effective moving forward. And if you can have those conversations on an ongoing basis, you have fewer problems with accountability. Accountability, how many times is, well, I didn't know that, or I didn't understand that. And you get that on a fairly regular basis. I hear that all the time. And if we can stop people having those conversations with us by having defined accountability conversations based on shared expectations, we run into a situation where things run far more effectively. And it's not just leader to teams, it's interdepartmental as well. And it's also managing up as well as it's managing down. You need to be able to have those conversations with people at the senior suite that says, look, if you want us to get this done, we need this from you. We can't do this because we have this, and this going on. What is the priority? You need to let us know what are the priorities and how are we going to, dedicate budget, time, and leadership towards this to be able to make sure that this is done and everybody understands that this is a problem. So it's communication has to be a multifaceted thing. It's about speaking, it's about listening, and it's about actions. Now, I just want to stop here for a second and see if anybody have any questions. Keep going.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does senior leadership create, I guess, how does a leader, if a leader doesn't get those questions of what should I be prioritizing, how do you create a culture where people ask those questions as opposed to saying, well, I had this and this and this and I made that decision? Because in my life, I've been on both ends of this.
Right.
I've been on where I had lots of things. I've gone to leadership and said, okay, here's which of these things is the priority? And their answer was some version of, they're both the priority, figure it out. And on the other hand, I've been in a leadership position in my career where I haven't necessarily gotten that question, where I would have loved to get it and be able to give that guidance. And I find out later that I didn't get it.
Right.
So, I mean, I get that the people who responded, they're both a priority, figure it out. That wasn't terribly helpful. It's a more colorful story for anyone who wants the full version another time. But anyway, yeah, curious about your thoughts on that.
We have a couple of serious problems. In larger companies, I call middle management the permafrost layer. Nothing gets up, nothing gets down. And you have a series of people that are, in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, because of cultures that are built within companies, they're more afraid of losing their job, and they're more afraid of change than they are than anything else. And therefore, status quo to them is the most comfortable thing. And therefore, anything that is going to challenge that status quo, they're either not going to communicate down or they're not going to communicate up. And the first thing that needs to happen is that is getting rid of that mentality. You're not going to get rid of those people. You might have to get rid of some of those people, but it's really creating a situation where there is effective communication at all levels and the understanding of there is no stupid question. And anybody can ask a question and anybody deserves an answer. Leadership needs to be able to be succinct, to be able to sit there and say, these are our priorities. These are our priorities. These are the things, that we, need to be focusing on either this quarter, this, this half year, this year, this, over the next 5 years. They need to be succinct about what are the things that are the most important things to them as an organization. They have to know, and they have to know why, and they have to be able to communicate it. If you're going to senior leader and you have a set of priorities, you also need to be able to sit there and say, we need this because of this. And if we don't do this, these are the ramifications. We need to be clear, not of, geez, it'd be really nice to have a new CRM system. No, we need to have a new CRM system because the old one is ineffective and it's costing us money and it's losing us customers and it's causing frustration within the company, and our sales team are unable to do what they need to do. And there needs to be a case study behind it. So we need to be able to get beyond the fact that I want to, this is a priority and this is why, and this is what it's going to do to make the company a better person. And it's not about me, it's about the company. And I think that we really, how do we affect that? A lot of it comes down to coaching. A lot of it comes down from at all levels. It comes down to be able to have effective coaching at all levels, to be able to say there is a better way. And there also has to be awareness of people that are dragging their feet and dragging their heels, that those people are not creating a service to the company, and they're not enabling the company to succeed at the level it should be. And that becomes a cultural shift. And that takes time. That takes time. First of all, you have to be aware that there's a problem. And second of all, you need leadership that is willing to sit there and say, I may be part of the problem. Okay, now how do we fix it? But there is no simple fix for this. There is no simple fix. Simon, you said you had an antidote or something?
Yeah. So about 20 years ago, I was working with a private equity firm bought one of the companies I worked for, and the managing partner called me up and said, I'm thinking about leaving the firm to be the CFO of one of our portfolio companies. He said, so you're one of our key CFOs. Can you please come out to LA and teach me how to be a CFO? And, that's, coming from a Brown Harvard guy, you sort of have a minute where you have to take a deep breath and say, okay, what am I going to tell this guy? And so I thought about it for a couple of weeks, and on the plane out, I sort of came on it, which was very, very simple. And I said this to him. We get to the office, he says, okay, what do you think? And I said, you know what, Chris, every day you're going to know what you want to look at, your bank balance, your AR, your incoming orders. You'll figure all that stuff out. I'm going to tell you the most important thing that you can remember is when you have a meeting with your team, you never leave that room unless they know exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Because it's the meeting that you're worried about afterwards, where you have 8 or 9 people in your finance department, your accounting department, your treasury department, whatever, that are spending time after the meeting trying to figure out what you really wanted. And that's going to cost you money because they're not going to get it right. So never leave a room with your team who doesn't know exactly what you want, because you are not sparring with equals. I mean, if he goes into a meeting with me and we argue about what's on a spreadsheet and formula, fine, right? Yeah. We can argue, we can hang with each other, but the controller is not going to know what he's talking about most of the time. So I only have a couple minutes left, but thank you, Ben. This has been great for me. Thanks a lot. And it's good to see all my old friends, but I just wanted to share that before I left.
No, I love that. I mean, the last thing I was going to say is that we need to go into meetings where leaders speak last, and that everybody sits there and says, look, these are my concerns. These are some challenges. The meeting starts off, this is what we're thinking about doing. What do you think? And getting the different opinions of different people in the meetings, first of all, gets to understand, do they actually understand what the challenge is in the first place? And second of all, you're also hearing what their thoughts are on the particular topic. The more we can understand each other, the more we can sit there and say, okay, I understand what's in these people's heads and they understand what's in my head, the better off we're going to be. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. I mean, I've been in this game almost 30 years. There's a lot of people I know that are senior leadership that think they're great communicators that really aren't. And they know exactly what they want, but they don't know how to communicate it to other people. And that's the challenge of business. That's the key challenge of business, is being able to get everything out of your head in a way that other people are going to be able to understand it and be able to, be motivated by it.
I'm stealing leaders speak last in permafrost.
Absolutely. Take it,
Goodbye,
take it, use it.
everybody. See you soon.
Thanks,
Take
Simon.
care, buddy.
Barry, did you have any thoughts?
I have just a perfect example of miscommunication. And so quite a while ago, I was with a Japanese hi-fi distributor, one of the big name brands. And we had a very, very sophisticated computer system. And our vice president of operations, I think, desperately wanted to manage that IT system that was under my care. And I would be very happy to give it to him. It was no big deal. But he didn't know how to play it straight. He only knew how to play games. So one Monday morning, he came in screaming that they were shipping in the warehouse and the IT guys weren't there to run the computer. So I asked a very simple question. I said, well, did you ask them to be there on Saturday? And he said, no, why would I have to ask them? I said, because it's a Saturday. When do they always come in on Saturday? You only wanted them because it was the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And he went screaming into the president, and the president laughed at him. And of course, that didn't bode well for relationships after that. But I mean, that's a perfect example of total stupidity of playing politics instead of playing what you really needed.
Yeah.
And had he come into me on Friday and said, I need IT coverage, it would have been there. It's no problem.
Yeah.
But he did it purposely. He wanted to make it an issue. And there's a lot of that goes on in companies of protect your ass.
Lot of fiefdoms, a lot of
It's a very
pecking
difficult thing to
order, a lot
overcome.
of all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I find that very, very difficult to overcome when you're trying to get stuff done. People want to always do it the way they've always done it. They don't really want to change. Who are you to tell me to change? There's all kinds of stories that come up. And I find that it's probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to deal with is change in organizations.
Yeah. And change is a lot of fun. I gave Brittany an ebook that I wrote on change, and she's going to send it out to everybody. So hopefully that'll be valuable to people.
Great.
So for us, our modus operandi is to come in and figure out what the issue is before we come up with a solution. Because every company is different. Every part of a company is different. And being able to understand the interdynamics, able to understand the culture, able to understand the motivations and how are people compensated and what is the pecking orders and how are the fiefdoms actually created? Those are important things. And if we can understand those, then we can start building communication processes that are going to be effective. If you don't understand the underlying challenges of your particular organization, you're never going to be able to build communication processes that are going to work effectively.
I buy that.
Oh, thanks for sending that out, Brittany.
No problem. I'll send it later with an email as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Does anybody else online have a question? Because we're getting down to the short sticks. One more story I'd love to tell is dealing with new product development and bringing new products to market. The biggest challenge I see within organizations is sales are not told soon enough. They always leave it to the last minute. Says, oh, sales only needs 2 weeks of product knowledge and we'll just put it out the door and they'll just sell it. The challenge is salespeople are on quarterly and yearly bonus structures. And they're already out there selling whatever else you have to sell. And their attitude is, if this comes in a month before quarter end, a year before a month before year end, they're not even going to look at this because they're already in the middle of a project. They're already in the middle of a sales cycle. They're already trying to sell somebody something else. They don't have time to learn a new product. They don't care about a new product because no one's given them a reason or an impetus to care about the new product. They don't know if this thing's actually going to work or not. So therefore, it's ineffective. Now, if you start getting salespeople in early and you give them snippets and ideas of what's coming down the pipe, they can start having conversations quietly with key, clients 6-9 months ahead of time, saying, look, this is what's coming down. You're going to want to pay attention to this. You're going to want to keep some budget aside for this. You're going to want to be the first to market on this and be able to build up that anticipation and be able to get them interested in it. So when this does come down the pipe, they've already built a ready pipeline for the product. And it's amazing how many new products fail because companies, forget to bring sales in early into the process. So Gershon, any closing words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. There's collective wisdom on this call is much bigger than me. Sometimes I ask questions.
Questions are always good.
So the salespeople, interesting. So what do you do if you've got, when you talk about this sales thing you were just saying,
Yeah,
that's if you've got like a major change. Like we have a client who, was selling 6-figure contracts and they're like switching from like pay once to like much smaller subscription or the opposite or whatever
sure,
it is.
whatever.
That's the type of thing that you're talking about, not a more transactional type thing where.
No, it's not transactional, but say you're selling into, $50 million, $100 million, sales situations, and you have a new laptop that's coming onto the marketplace. And it's, this new laptop is going to be coming on board and, stuff like that. And, you're already selling the old laptop. You're already selling monitors. You're already selling, network cards. You're already selling whatever these things. You're not going to take the time to learn the specs and the feeds of a laptop that you know nothing about just to get it out the door, quickly. You're going to sell the stuff that your customer's already comfortable with, that your customer's already looking to buy, that your customer can write quick purchase orders on, instead of something that's going to be a 3, 6, 9 month, buy cycle. So, getting salespeople at the last minute or the last of the quarter, last of the year to focus on a new product is the kiss of death. Because you haven't given them a reason. Most of the times you haven't given them a reason, and you haven't given them the time to be able to pre-sell this to their clients, to build up the anticipation for the product, and to be able to get them knowledgeable enough about the product to be able to be comfortable about, hey, listen, you really, I know we were going to sell you these, but we want to sell you this instead, and this is why.
Right. Interesting. All right. So, do you have any final words? Do you want to tell people how to reach you, anything like that?
I mean, the easiest way to reach me is through yourbrandmarketing.com. Everything's there. My email's there. There's a link to book a 30-minute free strategic session with me. All my ebooks are there. Access to my podcast. Everything is at yourbrandmarketing.com. We really love working with B2B type companies to sit there and say, how can we help you communicate more effectively? How can we sit there and look and say, this, what are the things that are the challenges? What are the things that you guys are looking to do, and to build up the systems and the processes and the people to be able to either change more effectively or build out new systems that allow you to work more effectively together.
Got it. Well, I'm going to put the poll now and then poll up now, and then I will say a few final words. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for joining us and for sharing your insights. I learned a lot. I know the others did as well. And thank you to all of our guests and to all of our listeners who are not guests today, but will be listening to the recording. If you need to reach us, imperialgrp.com or Gershon at imperialgrp.com. And Ben already told you how to reach him. And again, thank you all for joining. And have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us.